Okay, I think I need to, yeah. So what I will do today, just one, well, we can already start with this screen. What I will do today is explain a bit about why Fairspace started advocating for safer streets, why we see sexual street harassment as a form of gender-based violence, and what has been the journey from 2014 until now in the Netherlands, and what can we learn from Egypt and Belgium? What are we hoping to learn from Egypt and Belgium, so that we can, basically make the law as effective as possible here in the Netherlands? Well, what you can already see on the screen is that for Fairspace, sexual harassment is at its core a power dynamic. Whereby people with privileges or power in public space use words, gestures, or actions that remind certain groups or people of their vulnerability. And in this case, what we're discussing today, mainly women and girls, but also people from the LGBT community, people of color, people with a handicap. And even if that was not the attention, very often that is still this power dynamic and this power imbalance is what is behind incidents of street harassment. So what is it not? Because usually, and especially in the beginning when we started advocating for safe streets, it was said that sexual harassment it's a harmless flirtation, it's normal behavior. It was very much normalized in the Netherlands. I think to some extent it still is, or that women and girls should take it as a compliment, because isn't that just nice that somebody says something about the way you look or the way you appear. But I want to remind everyone why sexual harassment is not a harmless flirtation, and I will back this up with some statistics. In 2018, the city of Amsterdam did a research across women in the city, which showed how persistent street harassment is in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam. For example, 81% of women and girls between the age of 15 and 34 experience sexual street harassment at least once in her life, which is of course a lot. And in Rotterdam, the year before, research was done into sexual street harassment, and the results showed that 94% of women between the age of 18 and 45 experienced at least one form of harassment. And with these forms, you can think of unsolicited compliments, whistling, hissing, staring, catcalling, but also more offensive comments, stalking, or asking for sex. And why is it not harmless? It's because it leads to negative emotions to people who experience this, on a continuous basis in their life, but also feeling unsafe in public space. Which leads to changing your behavior. So changing the way you dress in public space, taking different routes to work, to when you're going out, to friends, which then is, of course, the result is that you have a restricted sense of freedom in public space. And that's what makes sexual street harassment not at all harmless. So to tell a bit about the journey to safe streets in the Netherlands, it's actually quite recent that we've started discussing this in the Netherlands. In 2014, the Dutch word for street harassment, which is straatintimidatie, was nominated for the word of the year. Because only in that year, 2014, straatintimidatie, street harassment became a much debated topic. So before 2014, it was hardly spoken about. It was very much a normalized phenomenon in the streets here. But that changed in 2014. That started with a petition by the initiative called Stop Straatintimidatie, Stop Street Harassment, who petitioned for a law against street harassment, so criminalisation of street harassment. But in that year, 2014, and also 2015, 2016, the initiatives against street harassment were very much grassroots, local actions, local demonstrations. This is also how Fairspace started. first under the name of Holleback Netherlands. We were a platform where through your phone, through an app, or through the website, people could leave incidents of street harassment, which were then geotagged and put on the map. As you can see on the most right image, this developed into a map of the Netherlands where you could see where incidents occurred. And even though it doesn't show the whole of the Netherlands, you can see that it is quite widespread across the country. So those first years were very much about raising attention and putting street harassment on the map. Then it was actually in Amsterdam where the first government-supported initiatives started to tackle the problem of street harassment. Amsterdam was the first city that developed a plan of action to end street harassment. They started a task force called Task Force Street Harassment. Fairspace also became a part of this task force, and together with a group of organizations, we gave advice to the city of Amsterdam on how to campaign to end this problem, and also what kind of messaging was needed to raise awareness of this issue. I know we have Jens here from Emancipator, who was also on the task force from the beginning, and I hope that later during the panel discussion he can also share his experiences on this. The gemeente also started a big public campaign. That is actually the second photo in the screen, with the lady who has written negative slurs all over her body. And what was also put into place was a local law to penalize street harassment. However, that has never been upheld in Amsterdam, and I can go into why that is the case in a bit. But after Amsterdam, a number of other cities in the Netherlands started developing plans of actions or doing research in their municipality into the scope of street harassment. So at this, on the screen, you see some awareness campaigns from different cities across the country. Rotterdam was the second city that installed a local law against street harassment, where street harassment could be penalized with a fine. I also saw that we have somebody from the city of Rotterdam present today, so maybe later on she can also tell a bit more. But what happened in Rotterdam is that one case was brought to court. A person that was a perpetrator of street harassment multiple times. But the judge ruled that a conviction for street harassment would conflict with freedom of speech, and that a national law was actually needed to back up a conviction against street harassment. And that's where this national draft law that we're discussing today came into being. Because this is where we are now, 2020. Actually, two things are happening simultaneously. One is that the Ministry of Justice and Security included sexual street harassment into the law against sexual crimes, the Wet Seksuele Misdrijven. The law was consulted with CSOs, with the parliamentary committee, and it makes sexual street harassment punishable by law. I'm not sure if you're very much interested in the details, but in different ranges of street harassment, you can either receive a punishment of imprisonment between 3 and 12 months, or a fine. A money fine. You have to pay a fine. At the same time, at the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, the Department for Emancipation started quite a large program to end street harassment, not through criminal law, but through prevention and awareness raising. That's actually called Veilige Steden, Safe Cities for Women and Girls. And every municipality in the Netherlands that wants to develop a plan of action against street harassment that needs support can turn to the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science and ask for support and also financial support. And at the moment, 13 municipalities in the Netherlands have joined the Veilige Steden, the Safe Cities plan, program. Maybe just to quickly go back to the law, the reason behind penalizing street harassment is that the Ministry of Security and Justice believes that if you criminalize street harassment, the threshold for victims of street harassment becomes lower and they can more easily report it to the police. And also if there's a national law in place that obviously has more mandates, more weight than local city laws. Fairspace was also invited to provide input on this draft law, and we raised some concerns with the Ministry of Security and Justice and Security, I have to say. So while criminalization of street harassment, it actually offers some very positive, offers some positive effects. First of all, is that there is a standardized norm across the country that sexual street harassment or inappropriate behavior is not okay, and that it's something that we no longer accept in the Netherlands, that should no longer be normalized, and that when you are a victim of it, you can speak out. That's actually a second positive effect of this law, is that when you are a victim of street harassment and you want to report it, that you need to be taken seriously by police officers, by others, by people in power. We also hope that criminalization of street harassment provides a deterrent for, perpetrators, potential perpetrators, very often men and boys, that they know if they show this behavior and if they get caught, then there's a punishment waiting for them. And another positive side is that with this law, the Netherlands fulfills a requirement of the Istanbul Convention, of which Netherlands is a signatory, because that convention, I need to quickly look it up, Article 40 of the Istanbul Convention states that sexual harassment must be subject to criminal or other legal sanctions. But we also have our hesitations with the law, and we are not sure that having a law in place takes the problem of sexual street harassment away. And why is that? Because through our work, and also because we are in a way experts and victims ourselves, many of the reasons that by which victims do not report street harassment are because, first of all, victims think that street harassment is part of the street culture and that it's normal. But also victims don't want to escalate a certain situation by calling for help or calling the police. Victims often don't know that they can report it. But also victims are not confident that their complaint will be taken seriously by the police, or they don't want to relive the situation by having to retell it to the police. And there are also a large group of people in the Netherlands that generally do not really trust the police, especially if you're a person of color or you have a non-Dutch background. It's a very problematic relationship here, and the criminalization of street harassment removes some of these barriers, but not all of them. And that's a concern that we still have. Another one is that if we have this law in place and we give the signal to people in the Netherlands that when you are a victim of street harassment, you can report it to the police, do we then have enough, does the police have enough resources, skills, behavior to give an adequate response and to follow up on each incident of these reports? Because if victims then go to the police and there's not enough capacity to follow up on the reporting, are you then not making the trust gap between citizens and the police bigger? Another one also just mentioned by Willy in the introduction is that the law needs to be more specific. What behavior exactly is going to be considered street harassment or sexual street harassment and then punishable? The Minister of Justice and Security has already come back after the response of civil society that they will look into making the law more specific. And then there's also still the risk of profiling, because what we've noticed since the beginning of our work against street harassment is that there is this assumption across quite a lot of people in the Netherlands that perpetrators are always men of color, which is not the case, because we have talked to a lot of people, we have our own experiences, and it is not the case, but it is what we notice is that inappropriate behavior by men of color is considered, in a way, triggers much more condemning reactions than inappropriate behavior by white men. And that is, of course, a huge discussion and a huge debate, which we may not be able to hold today, but it is a reality in the Netherlands. And we should be very careful in that if people start reporting incidents of street harassment, how do we ensure that all incidents of reporting, also by white men, are reported and not only inappropriate behavior by men of color. So where does Fairspace come in? I want to show a video about what we do. I hope I checked the sound button and that you are able to hear the sound. This video will show you a bit about the mission and vision and what we do at Fairspace.
Imagine a world where everyone, no matter who they are or where they're from, can move through public spaces freely and with confidence, without changing their routes to work, worrying about what they are wearing, or who they are with. Imagine a world where the people around you aren't just silent observers, but are active in keeping spaces free and fair, not just for themselves, but for everyone. And you learn early on about important topics like equality, diversity, and consent. Imagine if you didn't have to imagine this at all, but that it is happening right now. Fairspace uses powerful tools like education and public awareness campaigns to empower women, girls, LGBTQI communities, and people of colour to reclaim public space. At the same time, we see how important it is to teach communities to do their part as allies and active bystanders. Fairspace is based in the Netherlands. We're part of an international network of grassroots organisations and are powered by a local, passionate team made up of trainers, scholars, policy advisors and creatives. We understand that people have different experiences in public space. That's why we focus on tailor-made solutions for the diverse communities with whom we work. So, how will you work towards a free and fair future? Join Fairspace. Free and fair spaces for all.
So I hope this this gave you an idea of what Fairspace does and what we're all about. So just to say it once more, our vision is for a society in which everyone, regardless of your sex, your race, your gender expression, your ability, that everyone feels safe moving through public spaces. That includes nightlife, public transport, the streets, but also the workplace. And we focus on a number of, we focus on education, and we do this through giving workshops, bystander intervention workshops, but also more general workshops and inspirational talks about street harassment and what we can do to prevent it. And we do a number of campaigns throughout the year. We work through co-creation. This is what we're going to start in Rotterdam next year, which means that we're trying to build safer public spaces with the communities in that space. So for example, in Rotterdam, we're going to build public spaces with a group of young people, and we're going to identify solutions that work for young people in changing your behavior in public space. And we give policy advice to government, local government, but also to other NGOs and INGOs on how to address street harassment as a form of gender-based violence. And based on everything that I've just discussed about the law, we have some recommendations for the Netherlands, and we'd love to also learn in a bit the recommendations from Egypt and Belgium. But what we hope that what will happen besides a law against street harassment is that there will be more resource available for the preventative side of this issue, so that we don't only focus on criminalising behaviour, but that we actively try to prevent inappropriate behaviour through training, campaigns, but also through the education system. We think that it's important to engage men and boys in redesigning public space and redesigning how we behave with each other through public space, And Jens can maybe later on tell us a bit more about how he does it with Emancipator. But also to the government and local government, that there's not really a one-size-fits-all solution. What may work in Amsterdam may not work in a smaller community. What may work in a certain neighborhood may not work in another neighborhood. How you approach students is not maybe how you approach adult people or any other community in our country. So we hope that we can use co-creation more often to build local solutions for safe public spaces. Yeah, and then to conclude, well, we think the law is a good standardized norm which states that sexual street harassment is unacceptable behavior. We hope that there will be adequate resources to well, respond to reporting of street harassment, but also the prevention of street harassment. Well, what we focus on a lot is bystander intervention. We believe that a safe public space is should not only target either victims or potential perpetrators, but everyone in public space has a responsibility to keep it safe, also as a bystander. And as I just said, we believe in tailor-made approaches for local solutions, and we hope that there will be resources and freedom to develop these tailor-made approaches. And finally, we believe in an intersectional approach because what also was said in the video, everyone has different experience in public space, and just as we need tailor-made approaches to reach communities, we also need to be aware of these different experiences. As a woman, you have certain experiences, but as a woman of color or a woman with a headscarf, your experience will maybe be worse or more different or more violent. And the same goes for everyone who moves through public space. Yeah, and that's where I want to leave it for today in the case of the Netherlands. I very much look forward to the next two presentations and the discussion that we're going to have afterwards.
Thank you, Laura, for your inspirational talk. I'm very happy you stressed prevention because it's, I think, really important in the case of sexual violence and sexual harassment in general. We have to move on. I would like to introduce to you Enas Hamdy. She's a gender expert. She's from Egypt, a gender expert, researcher, and a monitoring and evaluation specialist working on gender and elimination of gender-based violence for more than 12 years. In December 2019, she became the executive director and head of the board of trustees for HassMap until July 2020, and now she's the co-founder and co-CEO at Rest Solution. She received her bachelor's degree in statistics in 2008 and her master's degree in gender and development in 2018 from the Faculty of Economics and Political Science at Cairo University in partnership with International Development Studies at Sussex University. Enas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm gonna share my screen now with you. Does it work? So I am Hannah Kabelka. I am ex-executive director for HassMap. Today I'm gonna through a couple of topics briefly. First, I will start with a basic introduction about HassMap and sexual harassment in Egypt, then the criminalization of sexual harassment, and the governmental effort to active use of sexual harassment law, in addition to individuals' effort to fight sexual harassment either in public spaces or private space, and then the challenges that prevent people from the active use of the law. HassMap is the winning volunteer initiative founded in 2010, and then we became as a registered NGO in 2016. We are working to engage all the Egyptian society to does not tolerate with sexual harassment in order to build a society that does not guarantee that guarantee the safety for everyone from sexual and gender-based violence. Sexual harassment in Egypt is known and common for everyone in Egypt. Sexual harassment is there, and despite there is lack of recent data about the prevalence of sexual harassment, but I picked some of the statistics. For example, in 2010, the survey of young people in Egypt revealed that it's almost 50% of the women they interviewed experience at least one type of sexual harassment. In 2012, UN Women conducted a study and showed that almost all the women they interviewed experience at least one form of sexual harassment. As this percentage is similar to what we find in 2015, where there is 95% of the female we interviewed also experience at least one form of sexual violence. HassMap conduct or intervene to fight and end sexual harassment either in public spaces or private spaces through two main interventions, either it's online interventions or community interventions. For the online intervention, we offer people with a reporting free anonymous platform to enable or offer people with a space to share what they are experience all witnesses, because in 2010 sexual harassment was a taboo. No one speak about it, or even if they want to speak, they don't know where to go, and also they are afraid of talking about experienced sexual harassment because it's a shaming thing that happened to women, so women don't prefer to share it. So we offer people with the space and guarantee their safety and also their personal information to share what they are experiencing. And the report that we received helped us in designing different social media campaigns to change the perception and the culture around sexual harassment, because the culture is normalized sexual harassment and dealing with it as it's a normal thing, nothing happened, and it's not a big issue. So we started to design different media campaigns to raise awareness about sexual harassment, the excuses and justification people give to harassers, and also the types of sexual harassment.
Enas, I'm very sorry to interrupt you because we're realizing we're having some black squares on your presentation. So if you like, I can share for you the slides so we can try if that would help. Is that okay for you?
You mean this box?
Yes.
I can move it.
Can you remove it? Oh, now there seem to be even some
sorry.
more. No, absolutely no worries.
It's fine now? Is it okay?
There still seem to be some. Let me see.
Somebody is giving an advice on how to get rid of the black boxes in the chat.
Yeah. You can check one of the boxes.
Yeah, with sharing your screen, then you have on the left side, you have two options.
Yes.
And then you only have to check the left one, not the right one.
This?
Yeah.
Yay. Oh, thank you so much.
Sorry.
Wonderful advice. There we go again, Enas. Sorry for the interruption, but this helps big time.
So these are examples of the media campaigns that we used to launch to raise awareness about sexual harassment and its related issue like consent. Also building safe, and this campaign was about cyber harassment. Beside the online interventions, as I mentioned, we have community-based components or projects like safe schools and universities, safe corporates, community partnerships, and research and content creation. Here are some examples for our community or on the ground activities, training and public awareness sessions. And here is some examples for our partners in safe corporates. For criminalization of sexual harassment, in Egypt, sexual harassment is criminalized according to the law. and the harasser can be charged based on the Article 306A and 306B in the Penal Code. And it can charge the harasser from prison takes 6 months to 5 years, and the harasser can pay 3,000 Egyptian pounds up to 50 Egyptian pounds. And here is the link for the full Egyptian law for sexual harassment, and I can put in the chat box for more information. It's in, and also it's available in English. Now I want to play 2 videos for the campaign we launched in 2015. It's called "The Harasser is Criminal." And this campaign, we aimed to raise awareness about the Egyptian law for sexual harassment, and also encourage the bystander to take action when they witness sexual harassment incident happen in front of them. And I apologize, the video in Arabic, and there is no English subtitle. But the message is clear regardless of the language. This is video for the intervention.
كنت في يوم نازلة الشغل بدري. أنا عادة بعرف أتصرف لوحدي. عادة ما بخافش وبعرف أرد. بس المرة دي كنت لوحدي خالص في الشارع الصغير. الفكرة إنه ما كانش بيمشي ولا بيزهق. وكنت بجد خايفة. وحاسة إن مشوار بسيط من البيت للعربية عمال بيطول. لولا صبحي ومراته كانوا جدعان مش عارفة هو كان ممكن يعمل ايه.
السكوت على المتحرش مشاركة في جريمته. ما تساعدوهوش، ساعدوها هي. التحرش عقوبته الحبس.
And this, the another video, it's about introduce the idea of the law, and sexual harassment now is criminalized.
واحد 80% من حالات التحرش بتحصل في المواصلات العامة. يعني قدام عينينا ومحدش بيعمل حاجة. المتحرش مجرم زيه زي الحرامي والقاتل، وعقوبته القانونية الحبس سنة. ما ينفعش تسكت عليه. المتحرش مجرم بالكلام، بالإشارة أو بالفعل. التحرش عقوبته الحبس.
For the governmental effort to active use of sexual harassment, because it's not active, or not many people who are experiencing sexual harassment go to police station and report about it. For example, the National Council for Women recently added a hotline and WhatsApp number to the survivors to enable them to report about experienced sexual harassment and other forms of violence. And also they offered them with legal support. In addition to this, they are working on activation a draft law on protection the survivor and witnesses, and guarantee their anonymity of their personal information. The Egyptian Public Prosecution recently took the initiation in opening investigation in cases of sexual harassment and violence that people start sharing on social media. So they took initiative to report and open the investigation on it. The Ministry of Interior assigned an office in some of police stations to receive reports related to sexual harassment and violence against women. And this is similar to what the Ministry of Justice did. Also, they offer an office inside some of courts to provide support for the women who are experience different forms of violence. In addition to governmental efforts and NGOs, there are individuals who take initiative and start the movement to fight sexual harassment, like police assault, Catcall Cairo, Speak Up, Testimonies blog, Makhafish, where they are sharing testimonies for people who are experienced sexual harassment recently, or even it's happened before, maybe it's like 5 or more than 5 years ago. So now there are challenges that prevent people from using the sexual harassment law. For example, there is a lack of data about the numbers that went to court, so this will have a negative impact, or people will not trust in the law, and they feel it's not effective to go to police station and report because there is nothing happened. And also the social acceptability for sexual harassment, and of course of reporting. People dealing with sexual harassment, it's a normal thing, so they will not either go to police station to report about it, or even they are witnesses, they won't prefer to go to the police station. Also, in case a survivor want to report to police station, and already she or he go in the process of reporting, there are a pressure on them to drop off their reports, because the fear of being threatened or targeted by the harasser or their families or friends, or even the lawyers. And recently there is a case in Egypt. There is a girl that experienced mob sexual assault, and she go to police station and report about it. After then they got threatened from the lawyer or the harassers and their friends, and they start sharing her personal pictures on the social media, and they warning her if she didn't drop off the report, they might kill her. And also the long process for reporting can be a big challenge for the survivor to go to police station to report. In addition to, there is sort of invasion of privacy in the police station, because if a woman went to report about an incident, she have to tell everyone inside the police station what happened to her, which is not accepted, or it's not something you feel comfortable with sharing for anyone inside the police station. And also the police officers missing the professionalism in dealing with the survivors, and they might blaming the survivor, or didn't take the incident seriously, which caused psychological consequences on the survivors. In addition to lack of organizations that provide legal support for the survivors. All of these factors can play a big role in activation the use of the law, which definitely will increase the number of cases in Egypt, since people feel it's okay to harass in the street, and even there is a law, but nothing happened. For recommendations or conclusion, it's important to to facilitate or make the process of reporting more easy, or activate reporting electronic or online, even or especially in the time of crisis like COVID-19, where women can experience sexual harassment, but she cannot go to the police station to report. And also there is a need to active use or active application for anonymity of the reporter and witnesses information. In addition to, it's important to raise awareness and change the culture towards sexual harassment, because people, if they are dealing with it as it's a normal, then nothing will happen and sexual harassment will increase. Last thing, it's about how people or police officers dealing with survivors. There are need more training to at least to show empathy with the survivors, not blaming them or ignoring their reports. And that's it. Thank you, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Thank you, Enas. Lots of challenges to address in Egypt, but also great achievements as well. We have to hurry up a little bit. Please save your questions for the chat and we will address them later in the Q&A. So I would like to introduce to you Wouter Stes. He has been working in the field of children's rights and girls' rights for more than a decade in Belgium. And he's currently coordinating the advocacy work for Plan International Belgium under Safer Cities program. The goal of this worldwide program is to build safe, inclusive and responsible cities with and for adolescent girls by tackling sexual harassment. Wouter is the president of the Belgian Dutch-speaking Child Rights Coalition. In this role, he assembles organizations from different fields who aim to create a more child and youth-friendly society through a programmatic and advocacy approach. Please, Wouter.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction, Willy. I hope everyone can see my screen, the presentation.
Yep.
Yep, okay, perfect. So my name is Wouter Stes, and I'm Advocacy Coordinator for our Safer Cities program at Plan International Belgium. Maybe just a quick word about Plan International. We're a worldwide children's rights organization with a specific focus on increasing the access to their basic rights for girls. I'm trying to go to the next, hang on, sorry. I have to share a different screen it seems. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, one of the programs we've introduced over the past years in different countries worldwide is our Safer Cities program, specifically aimed at tackling sexual harassment in the public space. As Plan International Belgium, our main focus is on supporting programs worldwide, but since a few years we've also started to implement the Safer Cities program in our own context, seeing that we really see that this challenge of sexual harassment really is a universal challenge that we're facing. At the start of the program, we launched a youth poll, from which I will give you a few numbers just to give a bit of background information on what the situation on sexual harassment is in Belgium. Interesting for you maybe to know is that we're focusing on the programs on youngsters from the age of 15 to 24 years old, since we do see in international research that it's really the age on which people experience sexual harassment mostly for the first time. A first really astonishing number already is the number of people, the number of youngsters that have experienced sexual harassment in the past 3 years. 91% of the girls indicated to have experienced sexual harassment and 28% of the boys have experienced the same. I'm aware that this boy-girl picture is a bit very binary. I have to say that in the identification that we used in the research, we did offer, of course, the option to identify as X or as Y. What kind of harassment did the youngsters mostly face? You can see here it's all different kinds of sexual harassment: non-verbal, verbal, Physical, for example, 36% of the girls has already experienced unwanted touchings, most frequently at festivals, actually, which is why one of our first campaigns was specifically targeting festivals in Belgium. I've got here a full slide on the entire form of all the forms of sexual harassment. This PowerPoint presentation will be shared with you, so you can have a more in-depth look on that. It's important to notice as well that we did our research in different cities, so in Brussels, Antwerp, and Charleroi, being the Belgian cities in which we started to implement our program, and that there's quite some changes or some different challenges depending on which city you're in. One city there is a big challenge of sexual harassment in the public pools, for example. In the other one, the focus was more on tackling harassment in the public transport. So that's why we really try to look and to go for this disaggregated data as specific as possible. Another number that came out from our research was the people that when youngsters are victims of sexual harassment, who can they go to or who do they go to? And then we see that they really feel the urge to tell their own family, their own friends, so they're really their close circle. And that more institutionalized actors like police, like their teachers, like psychologists are practically not contacted after cases of sexual harassment. For the police, for example, you see here the number of 6%. That means we really have a dark number of 94% of victims of sexual harassment who don't report what happened to them to the police. So that really shows that there is a big challenge in terms of making reporting systems more accessible, but also lowering the other obstacles for victims to go towards official instances. For example, giving more training to police officers to handle cases of harassment in a good way, and to really think of the process in which they talk with a victim of sexual harassment. Since we are in the construction in the Netherlands of a new anti-harassment law, I could maybe give a bit of some impressions on the Belgian anti-harassment law, which exists since 2014. As a definition there, it's used that the law states that anyone who performs a behavior or act in public or in the presence of witnesses with the intent to consider or despise someone as inferior because of their gender or to reduce them to their gender dimension can be punished. This law has been introduced in 2014, and since then we've had an average of 25 complaints per year based on this law. If you remember one of the first numbers I showed you, 91% of the women and girls, 28% of boys and men were victims of sexual harassment throughout the past 3 years. Then you really notice that 25 complaints a year is really very few. And on top of that, it's really hard to actually get to a conviction based on this law. Actually, the first conviction and the first of very few was only in 2018. And that was actually the case of a police officer, of a female police officer who received sexual harassment, sexist remarks. One of the really big challenges you see there is that it's really hard to prove that you've been victim of sexual harassment, and there the fact that she was already a female police, that she was a police officer, of course, helped her to prove the case. So as I said earlier, some of the challenges that really need tackling or the possible solutions are the training of points of contact. There, of course, there's already worldwide, there's a lot of asks already to give more training to police officers, which is the really just recommendation. With Plan, however, we also aimed to train other people that could serve as first point of contact for victims of sexual harassment. For example, in these past years, we've had a really good cooperation with the public transport provider in the region of Brussels to train their bus drivers, basically, or the people who are on the bus, to make sure that everything is working out okay. Since Brussels, we had noticed from our research there and from our work with youngsters there that the public transport was really a hotspot for sexual harassment. Same could be done for teachers, for doctors, etc. Of course, it stays important to make the registerment of cases of sexual harassment way more accessible. And that's one of the reasons why, in a bit of analogy with what Enas has already told us with the map, the HassMap in Egypt, we've also started with a digital platform, which you can find on planinternational.be/safercities, with which we really specifically work together with cities, with Antwerp, Brussels, Charleroi, to make a mapping of places on which there is a feeling of unsafety or experiences of sexual harassment. But good to know there that there's also the option to really point out places in which you do feel safe as a youngster, and which actors really help you to feel safe in your own environment. Then if you want to go to the website, you'll see there that there's a lot more questions on this, making the mapping more specific, like which time frame did the harassment occur, were you on public transport, or at school, or what were you doing? Did someone intervene as a bystander, which is a very important aspect in tackling sexual harassment, as Laura had said as well. So there's a lot of different points to really map the city as specific as possible. Maybe just a little heads up in case you were already going to the Safer Cities tool right now. We've actually just this morning had a confirmation from another city, the city of Ghent, who is also starting the Safer Cities program. So for that, the digital platform is at the moment under construction. So not everything is working because we're introducing the new city into the platform as well. So that's a bit of a technical issue, but it's for a really good reason that we can really start this implementation of the program in another city. Besides the need for this kind of disaggregated data, one of our main issues as well is the fact that the experiences from a big part of the victims of sexual harassment, being the experiences from the youngsters, really barely find their way towards policy actors. If you look at your own local council, see how many people in there are from the age below 25 or even below 30, you'll find that it's very few, even less being girls. So that's something we're really working on in this program. We really want to give young people a voice. We do that partly with the digital platform. But another aspect in the program, which is really important for us, is the active youth participation. So next month, we're hosting a town hall meeting in which youngsters from 6 cities in Spain and Belgium who are involved in the Safer Cities program, 500 youngsters will come together to construct their recommendations on 5 aspects. So on the role of education, like what kind of skills can we teach youngsters to act against sexual harassment from an early age on in schools. Second topic being how can we convince even more people more bystanders to intervene. We actually, I saw the 4D method from Hollaback in Laura's presentation, which is a really helpful and really comprehensive tool to motivate people to intervene. Then third point is the public transport. I said earlier, it's really an important issue in Belgium, the sexual harassment on public transport. Then the fourth topic on which the youngsters will work is the redevelopment of public space. what is the role of lighting? What is the role of having a clean city in terms of creating an atmosphere of safety or an atmosphere of harassment? And then last but not least is how can we really structuralize the youth participation as measured against sexual harassment? In Belgium, we do have a good history on involving youngsters into some parts of our policies, but most of them are really specifically on youth work, on like how the youngsters can come together in their own free time. On other parts like safety, like mobility, like how a city is constructed, their youngsters are barely ever heard. So that's something we really want to structuralize based on the recommendations of the youngsters during the town hall meeting. And then for each of the cities, we have youth groups who will, in the months after this town hall meeting, who will follow up all the recommendations by doing policy and social influencing campaigns. So they will go multiple times into contact with their local policy actors on one hand, and on the other hand, they will start campaigns from within their youth groups, targeting the possible bystanders in their own city. I think I've covered the good practices and the things we learned with Plan International Belgium within the Safer Cities program and our steps in tackling sexual harassment. I really look forward to hearing all of your questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Wouter. Yes, Wouter, sorry, also mentioned, please share your questions in the chat and we will address them in the Q&A, which we are addressing right now. But I have a question first for three of you. Maybe you can reflect a little bit on the previous talks about on the talks of the other two. What are messages that you can take with you hearing the other speeches? Enas, Wouter, Laura, please. Any thoughts or comments?
I can go first. No, it was very good to listen to the examples from Egypt and Belgium. I think what struck me a lot in the case of Egypt is the specific recommendations on how this law could be more effective. As we also said, that reporting for us is a concern. We see that, well, actually in both situations, both Egypt and Belgium, reporting is actually lacking. And also what Enas said is that when you report, you also have to be addressed in a safe way, in a respectful way, and you need to be taken seriously. And I think there's also, once you have a law in place, I think then there's still a lot of work to do to make sure that law enforcement knows the law and knows how to deal with the people who report. And what I was very happy about to hear from the Belgium case is that Plan in Belgium has the opportunity now to include young people and really put a lot of effort and energy in engaging young people in ending harassment with the town hall meeting, with the youth groups. I really hope that in the Netherlands we'll get the opportunity to also on this high level start this engagement. And I'm very happy that in Rotterdam we can make a start next year. Also very interesting to learn about the cooperation with public transport companies. So I think maybe after this talk I can follow up with Wouter and ask for their experiences there.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Enas and Wouter, do you have anything to comment on things you heard?
Yes, thank you, Laura and Wouter, for your sharing insights. And for me, I'm interested in what Plans International do in terms of, as you said, Laura, public transportation, because I do reflect on Egypt's situation, because in Egypt it's commonly happen sexual harassment from public transportation, which is not necessarily to be aligned under the public transportation authority, like microbuses. And this is the main challenge here in Egypt, and little intervention happened with this target group. On the other side, there is intervention with metro or train stations, but there is no intervention or clear intervention with unofficial public transportation. The second thing about the map, having disaggregated data is important, and also showing the safe places on the map is important for people, despite we didn't be able to do the same with our reporting system, because we have a challenge of people don't know about the map, or they don't have access to internet to report, or even the culture of reporting is not commonly spread in Egypt. So this affects the idea or the mission of the map. So this gives me like a spirit to rethink about how we can reactivate using the map to be an active tool for people to know more about safe spaces to go, or even provide useful and accurate data about the situation in terms of sexual harassment, taking into consideration there is lack of recent data about sexual harassment.
Can I maybe go to the participants, because I see questions coming up, and this one is actually for Enas. There is an increasing need to include sex education and awareness about consent, etc.
Yes.
In our efforts against sexual harassment. How is HassMap responding to this, and how can we make these efforts more accessible to people with different social and educational backgrounds?
Okay, for sex education and awareness about consent, in Egypt, it's not easy to make a public awareness, even inside the schools, about sex education. But like 3 years ago, people started their campaigns on the social media about consent. And for example, in 2018, HassMap made a campaign called "After My Permission," or "No means no." So there is no direct and clear intervention to address sex education inside the schools, but movements and NGOs are starting to add this part, but they have to frame it in a way just to be acceptable from other people around them who are afraid of discussing anything related to sexual education. The second thing, how has responding to this? In terms of fighting sexual harassment and rape, we don't do direct intervention for survivors. For example, we don't offer like legal or psychological support, but we have referral system. We can refer survivors to other organizations who can provide legal or psychological support. But due to the climate in Egypt, most of the NGOs is not working on their full capacity. So this is a challenge for survivors to find a trusted place and a credited place to receive the support that the survivor needs. How can make this more accessible for people with different social and educational background? To reach for people from different backgrounds and educational level, we have activities online and offline. On offline, we deliver awareness sessions in different governorates. For the program of safe schools and universities, we worked with universities in different governorates in Egypt, so our work is not centralized in Cairo. But we didn't reach the whole population. But we are trying to mix between online and offline to deliver the messages for the larger target group. Yeah. Did I miss any question?
Yeah, I think education is very important in a broad sense, not only education in schools, but also in campaigns, in public capacity building for professionals. And I'm glad, for example, Wouter mentioned the capacity building of professionals in a broad sense. I think you meant in a broad sense. So not only police and people in this in public transport, but in care institutions as well, and in schools, of course. How do you see? Do you have any reflections on that? For example, Wouter, how is that in Belgium? Is education, in this sense, in the schools, important topic?
Yeah, actually, it is since about a year or 5. There's actually a really good framework on even on sexual education, but more specifically even on sexual harassment. So there's a framework specifically constructed for the Flemish education that is integrated as well in the terms that every student needs to achieve throughout their educational career. So that's really, if anyone wants to look up on that, it's in Dutch as well. It's from Sensoa, which is the Flemish Expertise Center on Sexual Education. So that is really an important part. And right now we're actually working together with Sensoa to construct new models and a new framework specifically on bystander intervention, because that was something that wasn't tackled yet in education and that we're hoping will be firstly introduced into schools and then afterwards also included into the terms that youngsters do need to get or obliged to get throughout their school career. Because that really is, like you just said, it's really education in a broad sense, not just police officers, not even just bus drivers, but actually really society as a whole. Tackling sexual harassment is really a responsibility of the entire society, and that's something we can tackle the best through education and campaigns.
Okay, thank you.
I want to add something to specifically related to education or schools. Recently, there are more intention from the Ministry of Education to focusing on implementing activities related to bullying, and not all of the schools speaking clearly about sexual harassment or sexual assault against children. So they start taking initiative to address bullying. So hopefully they will include sexual harassment and other type of abuse against children, maybe in education curriculum or the activities implemented inside the schools or awareness campaigns. And thank you, Sandra, for sharing Safe Kids. Because Safe Kids, it's an organization in Egypt, and they are focusing on raising awareness about sexual assault that happen to children, and raise awareness for their parents about all types of sexual abuse that can happen to children. Thank you.
Other questions? Somebody who wants to speak up, for example, and have a question for one of the speakers.
If there are no questions, there's one more remark I want to make based on something that Enas said in her session, and it was about the legal support to survivors of harassment, which then made me think of, again, the reporting with this kind of laws. In Amsterdam, I speak to girls from the age of 13 who experience street harassment on a daily basis. And then also I wonder, okay, if you're 13 and something happens like that, would you even consider going to the police? And then if you go to the police and your report is taken seriously, then what? Do you even have the resources and capacity to stay involved in getting this situation brought in front of a court? So I thought it was very good that Enas mentioned that besides the reporting, there's also what comes next that can provide a barrier for following up incidents.
Actually, Laura, your point, it's a challenge here in Egypt because individuals less than 18 years they are not allowed to go to police station to report about sexual harassment. They have to bring their parents or their guardian with them to go to report to police station. So this eliminate their effort or their ability to report about sexual harassment. But there is a way to offer the service for children through a hotline, the Council for Childhood. I can't know the translation in English, but there is an entity in Egypt that focusing on children. They offer a hotline to report about abuse or violence that children experience, and then they took initiative to fill report and start the investigation.
Yeah, interesting. And I think that would be the same in the Netherlands as well, that you need your parents or somebody over the age of 18 with you to report an incident.
Yeah. Okay. I have a practical question for Wouter from Lisanne Olderkamp. I'm very interested in the results of the town hall meeting. Will there be a publicly accessible report?
Good news, there will be. We're actually now gathering, so next month we'll be gathering the recommendations from the 500 youngsters. Then besides that, there's two other data which we're getting together. The first one being, in total, we're aiming to get 9,500 inputs on our digital platform. So the map, which I showed you. And then there's expert interviews taking place as well at the moment. And all of these data will be gathered together in a manual, as well as some inspirational examples of the policy and social influencing campaign from our youngsters. So all of these will be put together in a manual, which will be presented on a summit organized by the European Union in November 2021. So I can definitely, once that is available, I can definitely share the manual with you. You're also more than welcome to participate in the summit as well in November 2021. Next year, it will be, hopefully it can be take place live, and it will be in Madrid, but probably it will be also partly digitally. So really, your presence is more than welcome then, and I can definitely share the results of the manual.
Okay, thank you. I thought that your talk about youth participation was very inspiring. I think it's very important to include young people in the way we address these problems. Enas, can you reflect a little bit on that? How is that possible in Egypt? Shortly, because we have only a few minutes left. Sorry.
Mainly in Egypt, the main target group for the intervention related to sexual harassment is the youth. So we are targeting youth in safe universities and schools. Our volunteers who used to go to their neighborhood to raise awareness about sexual harassment and convince people to take action against sexual harassment, it's mainly youth. And according to the available data, there is no specific age group for people who are experiencing sexual harassment, but the majority of them are youth. So they are the main target group for some of our activities. In addition to we are trying to work more with institutions to does not tolerate with sexual harassment through their policies and activities, because working on the public spaces, it's not possible or safe all the time. So we are trying to use other possible ways to raise the awareness and to continue our work against sexual harassment to eliminate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to, we have to wrap up. I would like to invite Hannah Kabelka to do this for us. She is a young professional with a background in education, policy, gender studies, and international development. She works as our HR advisor at KIT and facilitates the communities of practice at ShareNet. So please, Hannah, can you wrap up for us this meeting? The results of this meeting.
Thank you so much, Willy, for the nice introduction, and maybe also to give this some context. We were, of course, in the course of organizing this event. I've been with the community of practice working on gender-based violence in the Netherlands for a while, organizing this meeting, and we were thinking actually how nice it would be to have a youth discussant with us here in the room today, especially since we have heard this came back now multiple times that young people are most affected, are experiencing this a lot of times. And as we have actually seen today, they're so often, these voices are so often not then being heard, especially on policy and negotiations. And unfortunately, we didn't manage to confirm that youth speaker today. And so me being quite a young person myself, I thought I'm happy to share my reflections as well on this background. And I'm of course in contact a lot with people in the age of 18 to 24, which was especially that age group that we talked about today. And on that matter, I want to share a little anecdote from a research experience I did 2 years ago in Colombia. So I'm bringing in a whole other country context, but I think that's nice to share that I spoke with a lot of school students there as was part of my master research. And I wanted to look especially at the component that we also spoke about sexuality education in public schools in Colombia. And I asked young people basically, how do you experience this? Is this helpful for you? Does this really empower you, what you speak about and learn about sexual harassment, about any kind of gendered interactions and expectations that you learn about in school? And the very clear result of these conversations was really, see, my teachers are trying here, because in fact in Colombia they have to, it's mandatory to have sexuality education. We have to speak about this with our teachers, but what really helps me and where I really feel that there is a more trustworthy and relatable experience is exactly in a conversation with, at that time with me, if someone my age or closer to my age comes and speaks with me, and I feel that this is such nice experience. And they told me about many other situations where young leaders or people from the school committee that were working on like mediation kind of services would engage in these conversations, or where people and then we had it more about sexual orientation and maybe other gender identities, would speak from their own experiences and share with them, okay, how do they deal with this? What tips do they have for them, instead of hearing it from the adult that knows it all. And yeah, I think that was a very important learning for me at that time also, that really got me very excited about this catchy term, meaningful youth participation. But I think we have now, especially in the last couple of weeks, touched upon this, and I want to bring that forward, that is very important to really see what young people want and need, and to bring it back to me and my experience with sexual harassment. And yes, I have experienced that many times in my life. And if I think back, what would give me hope, or what gives me hope in this whole discussion about criminalization, is yes, it feels good to know that there will be maybe easier steps for me to take, possibly to report that, and hopefully with the trust, because I may be in a very lucky position that I can trust the institutions that would follow up on this, which is also something I want to highlight. This is not the case for everyone. That resonated a lot with me, what Wouter said in the beginning. But that is really just one part of the story, and we have heard that it needs to be a more multi-sectoral approach to fixing that, and not only fixing these symptoms, but actually looking at what is the problem, that we still have this type of gendered violence so present nowadays. Why do these norms persist? Why is it still so normalized for so many people to do this? So I feel much happier with the outlook of having more people knowing the tools on how to deal with these situations if they see it. And yeah, we call it bystander intervention. And I think we will all be in situations where we are a bystander. It's indeed not binary. Also me as a girl, I can be a bystander in many situations when it happens to someone else. So also the whole engaging men and boys, I would say engage everyone to learn and know how to deal with it if it happens. So yeah, that were my thoughts They're for sure not complete, but there are still a couple of people left in the room, and we thought, and maybe some of you are also young, but it would be really nice to also hear from you what your reflections and outcomes and takeaways from this meeting are. So I'm gonna share a link with you here in the chat. It's a Mentimeter link. You can just click on it. Or you go to menti.com and click and enter a code that I can also copy here. And then you can leave us with your last reflections. I actually see some of you have put them in the chat already, and that's amazing. Please, we will also take them forward. But I'm going to share my screen now, and then you can see the responses from you all coming in, and also the speakers yourself. You can. You're also very invited to go to that page. I hope it works for you. Let me see if I can share my screen. And I already see some people have found their way to the website. And then I'll hand over back to Willy, who will sort of walk us through your last responses. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Hannah, for your thoughts and comments. So what are we seeing here from you? We can take a lot of learning from the experiences of other countries. A law needs a support system. I very much agree with that. Collaboration is considered important, including intersectionality, an anti-sexual harassment approach. Yes. Education, of course. So you have a lot of additional comments, I think. Very, very nice. So I think that to wrap up very shortly, I think we all agree that the law is an important instrument in dealing with sexual harassment, but we can't do this without education to prevent sexual harassment in the first place. And education is a broad concept. It includes school, but also campaigns and in public space. So I think that I don't see anything else coming up in the Mentimeter. So I would like to thank the speakers and Hannah for your inspirational talks, and all of you to have addressed this meeting and participating in this meeting, and for your questions. And let's all work together to prevent sexual harassment. And for now, I wish you all happy holidays and a very good and healthy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Willy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.